It is told by the fishermen and their fathers and grandfathers that when the fog returns to Antonio Bay, the men in the bottom of the sea, out in the waters off Spivey Point, will rise up and search for the campfire that led them to their dark and icy death. John Carpenter's The Fog, a horror classic, highly recommended film, stars Hal Holbrook, Adrienne Barbeau, Jamie Lee Curtis, Todd Atkins, Janet Leigh, and more. This film is a masterpiece in suspense and horror. Here I have the NECA Retrocloth Captain Blake, who, no, despite the sword, is not a pirate. He was the leader of a group of people with leprosy who wished to buy some land off of Antonio Bay for him and his people who had leprosy to live and ultimately die in peace. But the townspeople were too cowardly to have them living there and too greedy. They came up with a plot where they would create a campfire to lead them to shore, only they put it at a deadly rocky area, and the ship sunk, the men drowned, and they retrieved the gold and built the town. And essentially, it's the ghosts of those people coming for revenge on Antonio Bay. Also, this year, one other thing really cool. I want to get a frame for this because the image is just so striking. This came with the Retrocloth Captain Blake. So, our film begins right at the stroke, just before the stroke of midnight, with a campfire story. What I said was part of that campfire story. And then it goes to midnight, and we're introduced to Adrienne Barbeau, who plays the host of the town's station, radio station, KAB, and she's the late night radio host, which she has a good voice for because those late night radio host types have to have an almost hypnotic sounding voice, which she pulls off. And the town strikes midnight and things start to go crazy. A gas pump falls and starts pumping gas. A car lift going up by itself. Car alarms going off. The town just goes completely unhinged. Another character played by Todd Atkins, named Nick Castle, named for the actor that played Michael Myers in Halloween, picks up a hitchhiker, Jamie Lee Curtis, and right at the end of midnight, he gets a knock on the door. It's one of the ghosts, but as one strikes, the ghost knocking disappears. And what follows is a masterclass in how to build suspense. The day begins with Adrienne Barbeau's son seeing something shining in the water. He gets there, it's a gold doubloon, which turns into a piece of wood. And as he comes running to the house, we see something that gives nice background for these two characters, the mother and son. We see that she's obviously a single mother, but there's pictures of her with the father of her son, and if they were divorced, those pictures wouldn't be there, at least not in such a prominently displayed place in her room, which it's even though it never even mentions what happened, it's implied strongly that he died, in that this is a widow. But we also had at nighttime a ship, the Seagrass, that the crew members got attacked and killed by the ghosts, and Nick Castle's the owner of the boat, And and Jamie Lee Curtis goes with him to look at the boat. While this is happening, the mayor of the town, played by Janet Leigh, goes to talk to Father Malone, played by Hal Holbrook, about the benediction for the town's centennial ceremony that night. Now, where this gets interesting, the night before, when everything went unhinged, he found his great grandfather's journal, which a brick fell from a wall and the journal was there. And what comes as my favorite scene in the movie, because we get intercutted Hal Holbrook reading out of the journal with Nick Castle and Jamie Lee Curtis searching the seagrass, which the ship looked like it had been turned upside down in the water. Gauges stuck, thermometer stuck at 20 degrees. They even find a can of beer that has salt water in it. And it's this creepy, mysterious scene accentuated by John Carpenter's score and the grim monologue being given by Father Malone, which cuts to a creepy ghost story that Nick Castle tells that his father told him, and a properly done jump scare. I'm not going to go into too much about this scene. You have to see it yourself, but it's my favorite part of the movie. And the tension still keeps ramping up from there. This is a slow burn movie. It subtly builds tension more and more with each passing scene almost. And you know something's going to happen, and just the anticipation and dread, it works. That's this film's greatest strength. But anyway, this film also, another aspect I love is the cinematography. They do a great job at making these characters feel isolated. Especially Adrienne Barbeau in The Lighthouse. The way this scene is shot, it's creepy in its own right, because you see where this character's going. She's not going to be able to get away should anything happen, and nobody would be able to get to her in time. The only downside is we hear the radio station promo play on loop for like 2 minutes, and it does get a little grating after a while. I would have much preferred it if, rather than hearing the promo, if that subtle melody that was playing as she was riding up to the lighthouse, if that played as she walked to the station. And something happens there too, which again, see the movie, I'm not going to spoil it for you. It ramps up to the finale where the fog descends on the town and the ghosts start taking their revenge. And it's kind of dark, because even though they're after the descendants of the 6 original conspirators, they'll kill anyone that gets in their past, and you kind of get the sense, is this whole town being wiped out? Which the film never answered, which is another great thing I like. It leaves unanswered questions, which is always for the best. And I'm not even going to talk about the finale, but there's a very well acted, very well done conclusion that ends with a final scene with the ghosts and a chilling closing monologue by Adrienne Barbeau's character, Stevie Wayne, that is masterful. The delivery, the timing, the music, it's chilling. The Fog is one of my all-time favorite horror movies, and it's an A-plus horror movie. Now, if the copy of the DVD I have is out of print, but it's still pretty cheap to get a copy of. I got this on eBay for like $3. There's also a Shout Factory Blu-ray I'd love to upgrade to one day, but I highly recommend this. There's also a remake. My thoughts on the remake: great cast, terrible execution. The remake could have and should have been a great film on its own right, but they ruined it with horrible CGI, horrible writing. There was nothing the cast could have done with the material given them. If you get the remake on accident, don't panic. There's a protocol. Take the disc, walk to the nearest trash can, throw it out, then take the trash bag out on trash night so it will be properly disposed of. You will have done film fans everywhere a huge service. But this movie itself, I can't recommend enough. If you like suspenseful, atmospheric horror, The Fog will deliver. So, in closing, I'll point out there are a few scenes where you see closer up details of some of the ghosts and some stabbing, even though this is a bloodless movie. Those scenes were done in post because the studio wanted a little more gore in the film, and those scenes, if you take them out, the movie is just as creepy, just as atmospheric. They don't add a thing. As well as, I do love the ambiguous note of the ending without going into details. It ends in one of those, is everything going to be okay or isn't it type cliffhangers. Well, so The Fog, can't recommend enough. Been looking forward to reviewing this one for Montober for a couple months now, so don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe. Over and out.